When the Giants come to town, it's bye, bye, baby.
Missed an interview or want to hear it again? Catch them all at knbr.com/podcasts. Now back to Murph and Matt on KNBR 104.5 and 6.8, the sports leader.
All right, great song, Waterboy. Get everybody fired up for Fan Fest on Saturday at Oracle Park. And the man who is in charge of the San Francisco.
When the Giants come to town, it's bye, bye, baby.
Missed an interview or want to hear it again? Catch them all at knbr.com/podcasts. Now back to Murph and Matt on KNBR 104.5 and 6.8, the sports leader.
All right, great song, Waterboy. Get everybody fired up for Fan Fest on Saturday at Oracle Park. And the man who is in charge of the San Francisco Giants, the head of baseball operations. We don't get to talk to him enough because he does the afternoons in the summer. So Farhan Zaidi, thanks for hopping on the Murph and Max show with Brian Murphy and Paul McCaffrey. A hearty good morning to you, Farhan. How you doing,
Good
man?
morning, Farhan.
Hey, guys. Good to talk to you guys. Really get excited about getting to Fan Fest and getting this thing rolling.
How you doing, man? How's your head?
I'm good. I'm excited. I actually got a chance to make a day trip down to Arizona last week, see some of the guys. Our camp is really in full swing down there, more than you'd usually expect in January. A lot of big league guys, a lot of our prospects in town for a mini camp, and that got me really excited. So, we're really looking forward to this jump off point, and looking forward to getting to Arizona and getting rolling.
All right, little Arizona sun got you going. Okay, to know where you're going, you got to know where you've been. So this is our first chance to really talk about what was an incredibly memorable offseason. So, just to kind of cross the T's, dot the I's, and tell the fan base what happened, can you take us back to Aaron Judge, Farhan, and you look back now through the prism of time? Sometimes time helps a little perspective. Did he use the Giants? Is that he just used the Giants?
That's a good question. I think for these guys, sometimes it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster themselves. And, they probably go, whenever any of us have faced a big life decision, sometimes you're leaning one way, sometimes you're leaning another. And, I think for Aaron, I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I know he's really happy with his decision, but I think he wanted to see what else was out there. And there are probably times he was, the thought of moving out here and being part of what we're building here was appealing. And there are other times when the pull of being in New York with the guys that he'd been in the trenches with carried the day. And that's ultimately what happened. So, I have no regrets about the fact that we pursued him. He's one of the best players in the game, and it was a disappointing result. But again, you can understand it. I don't think people in the industry were that surprised that ultimately, he wanted to play his entire career in one uniform. It's great when guys get to do that, and we've had quite a few of those guys ourselves. So, it was disappointing, but, you just kind of have to turn the page, and we had a lot of other things we wanted to get done over the offseason, so we just had to keep moving forward.
Right, so it happens. Every time when a player chooses one team, that means 29 teams lose out. So then the next move. This is the curious part I think Giants fans would love a little autopsy on is because, the thought was that Judge fills such a need for you guys. And Carlos Correa, as great a player as he is, wasn't necessarily an area of screaming need. Not only do you have Brandon Crawford for this year, but Marco Luciano's coming up, and other guys. So I was wondering about the internal discussions about saying, well, let's go for Carlos Correa. Could you speak to kind of, was that almost we have to do something, or did you see him actually fitting a need?
No, I guess I'd sort of go back to your point, when one team signs a guy and 29 others miss out. But I would also say, guys at the top of the free agent board, all 30 teams would love to have. And to your point, the whole shortstop class, which we talked about some, publicly, internally, it's a little bit of a clunky fit because we've got a great shortstop, and it was going to create a little bit of a friction on the roster. But we talked about wanting to improve the defense, improve the up-the-middle defense, and we thought that was the best way to do it. And if you get a two-way guy who can play a good shortstop and hit in the middle of the lineup, that would help every team. So it really wasn't more complicated than that. And I'll say this about Carlos Correa. Our background work on him, talking to teammates and coaches and front office people who've been around him. He's a great leader, and that's something that we value really highly. And so, that in conjunction with the fact that he's in his prime and, has had a great career so far, it made him a pretty natural target.
Yeah, we're talking to Farhan Zaidi, head of Giants baseball ops. It'll be always forever a surreal day, that December day. I guess a simple question is, do you guys regret scheduling the press conference? Is that a mistake?
Yeah, the biggest issue in all this, I'll answer your question. Yes. I mean, that was a mistake. That was my fault. And ultimately, you don't want to get ahead of yourselves in these processes. But a bigger issue that we ran into a handful of times this offseason is, these deals historically are kept under wraps until you're on the other side of a physical. And we did that with a number of our players and had no issue. When the deal comes out, 5 seconds after you get off the phone with the agent, then it creates some kind of pressure and expectations, and that's a different dynamic altogether. So I guess, we first came, our first issue was that it got out right, which is inevitable, nowadays. But certainly being a little bit more prudent with that stuff going forward. I mean, we as an organization had a lot of stuff planned. It was something we were really excited about, but, obviously you want to be more prudent with that kind of stuff going forward.
Yeah, and, listen, I know we're going to talk about the 2023 season, and we want everything to work out well. Believe me, I'm a season ticket holder. I paid for season seats, so we want this to happen. But I am just kind of thinking we need to answer some questions for the fan base going in so that everybody's kind of on the same page and has a mutual trust. I guess another one that I would say, I think, speaking for the fan base and myself and my peers and my friends, that your guys' silence after the Correa physical was damaging. I felt like everything you said when you guys signed Conforto and Haniger, you could have said maybe within 24 to 48 hours after that. And I think you guys might have, do you look back and think you suffered a PR damage? You suffered PR damage by not speaking about the Correa incident right away? Because I think, Farhan, you let Scott Boras control the narrative. Is that a regret?
Yeah, look, I hear that. We've heard a lot of that. And I guess it's really probably the most frustrating circumstance because, in a case like, in your garden variety free agent pursuit that doesn't work out, you can sort of say whatever you want. When you have an issue on the physical like we did, it's a much more constraining situation in what you can say publicly. And I would, just point to the fact that he agreed with the Mets, within 12 hours of us saying that we weren't moving forward. And, when the Mets had their set of issues, they didn't say anything publicly either. So, that is sort of strong recommendation that we get from a number of people. But I understand it from the fans' perspective. You're wondering what's going on, and you're not hearing from the organization beyond, what little we could say. So I get that it was frustrating. It was frustrating for us not to be able to explain our side of things. And to your point, Murph, there were things that were said about the timeline and the sequence of events that I thought really reflected poorly on us, which weren't accurate and weren't fair. And so by the time, we felt like we were in the clear to talk about it publicly, I do think a lot of that first narrative stuck, and it was hard for us to unwind. So I get that. It was a really frustrating and disappointing process. But again, I think two things can be true in all of this. One is, we can understand the fans' frustration and disappointment on a couple of these players. But, operationally as a front office, even while we respect and understand that disappointment, we've got to turn the page quickly and kind of move on to the next thing. And to your point, the guys that we did bring in we're excited about. And, it's sort of a time of year when you do feel a lot of optimism about your team and what they can accomplish this year. So that's the kind of mindset we have going forward. But I understand the question. It's a fair question. It was a frustrating and disappointing time, but I think we're internally, emotionally turning the page, and we certainly hope the fans come along with us.
This is Rich Valdez. Maybe you've seen me on TV or heard me on the Mark Levin Show. Join me Monday through Friday for America at Night, a new kind of talk show for a new generation. We'll talk to influencers and newsmakers about what's really going on in America, from politics to pop culture. We're also going to talk to you, so make sure you subscribe to America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night. Get the podcast wherever you listen.
So just in the big boy world of dealing with high-priced free agents, Scott Boras, I think you've kind of said through wasn't telling the truth. He didn't represent the story accurately, and yet it's such a big money industry. You guys turned around and cut a deal with Scott Boras. You know what I mean? So,
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just, you know what's funny? He just, right as I was hopping on with you guys, he was calling me to catch up. So I literally just missed the call from him. So,
this is a weird business where you can kind of say, hey, I mean, listen, you didn't say the word he's a liar, but it's like he kind of lied in a way if he said that he was blindsided and you said, no, we called him when his plane landed. He's sort of lying, sort of, and then yet you guys are like, hey, what's up?
Yeah,
you know?
what time are we meeting for lunch, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, the thing that I, most sensitive about, the medical situation and situation with the physical, people can go back and forth on that. We have our process. I think we have the best medical and training staff in baseball, and, we're going to ride with those guys and their medical opinions. A lot of the success of this organization has come from the expertise of that group. But I think what, really struck a chord with us internally and was hard to hear is the stuff about, handling this in a way that was disrespectful to the player or, showed a lack of organization or, or unity on our side of things. I mean, again, we passed along the information about our concerns, within a couple of hours after Carlos had finished up with our doctors. And, we had a ton of conversations about it through that night. And so, even some of the stuff about everybody being in their suits and being ready to head into the press conference. I mean, I was at home, so I certainly wasn't expecting to be walking into a press conference on Tuesday morning.
Yeah, that was a hell of a narrative. Clear. That was a hell of an image that he crafted that made the Giants look really bad.
It did,
so that's tough if somebody's not telling the truth. So
yeah. No, I understand that. And again, I have a lot of respect for Scott. We do a lot of work with their business. I think a lot of it was people just inferring from what he said that this is how it went down, even if he didn't say it specifically. So to your guys' point, the fact that we couldn't address it specifically, and we couldn't, it wasn't a strategic decision, or it wasn't that we didn't want to face the music. I mean, there were sort of legal and collective bargaining implications to us talking about it. So that was frustrating. And then when, to your guys' point, by the time we were in a position to go out and speak about it, I think a lot of people had already been frustrated and disappointed to a point where it didn't really matter. Correcting the record didn't matter that much. Yeah,
it's fascinating. There'll be, you could do a documentary on this whole thing. And like we said, it's about going for it. Just a real quick one, because I do want to, is a 13-year contract smart?
Well, there you go.
I think at the end of the day, you've got to realize that whenever you do these long-term contracts, the way I think about it is you're sort of cross-subsidizing the present, with your payroll in the future, right. Because a lot of these guys, you're talking about AAVs in the 25 to 30 range. I mean, the top players in baseball, you could argue in the short term are worth more than that. In some cases, worth significantly more than that. But on the back end of the deal, you're probably not getting the same production. You're probably not getting the same health. And so you're sort of really borrowing from the future to finance, the present. Is that smart? I mean, 8, 9, 10 years from now, probably won't feel that way. But, we want to win. And I think some of the teams that wound up doing those types of contracts, they understand what they're getting into. But, the present really matters to the team. It's really competitive out there, and the National League is incredibly competitive. And teams want to kind of pull every lever at their disposal to try to make it work. But I guess the one word answer to your question is no.
There you go. That's very nice. Yeah.
Okay, other questions. I think it was agreed upon, I don't know if it directly stated, that the Giants wanted to get younger and more athletic. I don't think the fans think you got younger and more athletic. Do you want to counter that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's getting younger doesn't necessarily mean replacing 35-year-olds with 22-year-olds. I mean, that's a possibility, but some of it comes from you look at our corner infield spot. We had Belt and Longoria, and those guys played great for us, but we're going to be younger at those spots with. Our hope is Lamont can take the first base job and run with it and be the guy he was for us in 21. He was banged up last year, but he's had a great offseason. David VR, who I think, everybody kind of always looks at the top of your prospect list and the guys who are in the top 100. And VR is kind of a guy who's sort of stealthily moved along, was the best player in his AA league and his AAA league from a performance standpoint, came up and, we all kind of saw some of the ups and downs of his early experience in the big leagues. But you look at the bottom line of his performance, and it's really impressive for a rookie to come up and put up that kind of stat line. So, it's in some ways it's incremental. We've got to commit to some younger players, and again, it's a little bit pick your poison. We really believe in having a strong offensive lineup, 1 to 9. One of the strengths of our 23 team we think is going to be power. We've got, three guys who have had 30-plus home run seasons who we think can do that again. We have like 4 or 5 guys who have hit 20 and a couple more who've hit 18 or 19. So, we think we're going to be right at the top of the league in terms of home runs and power, and that's going to be a big driving force of our team. But to your point, it's sort of incrementally. Sometimes it's committing to younger players over bringing back veterans, and that can be difficult to do. But, hopefully the guys that are getting the opportunity to run with it and can help us upgrade in those areas we were hoping to this offseason.
Farhan Zaidi, kind enough to talk before FanFest Saturday. Well, we'll all be out there, and everybody wants the best for the Giants for sure. Questions, though, have to be asked. Gabe Kapler specifically said on multiple occasions, we have to get better defensively. Did you guys get better defensively? Because losing Belt and Longoria would think you did not get better defensively, and that would go against what Gabe wanted to do.
Yeah, we think those guys are at least solid average, have the potential to be plus at those positions. Again, youth and athleticism, which, those guys may not be 80 athletes, but they're in their prime. They move around well. With the new defensive alignment rules, range is going to be really important in the infield, and those are both guys that we think have really good range. And then, we expect, our outfield defense was a big issue last year. We think bringing in Haniger and Conforto, 2 guys who are really solid defensively. We think we're going to have like a lot of stability in our outfield, which we had talked about. Having Haniger, Yaz, and Conforto out there on a regular basis with Austin Slater mixing in. Our outfield defense was probably the biggest issue that we had last year on our team, and so having consistency there and guys that can even play a solid outfield, we think is going to be a big upgrade.
Farhan, just a few more, and we appreciate you hopping on. So I'm going to go big picture, macro, from 30,000 feet. It feels like, and we've said this on the air a bunch, like the NL West is like an arms race right now between the Padres and the Dodgers. And I'm looking at names like Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman in blue. I'm looking at names like Manny Machado and Juan Soto in brown. And I almost feel like, and this may be an unfair analogy or a cheap shot, but I'm not trying to be cheap. It feels like you guys are like a small island nation not engaged in this arms race. How do you answer to fans who are like, why do the other teams have the superstars and the Giants do not?
Yeah, I mean, I like we talked about this offseason, we certainly, pursued that angle to the extent we could. Our hope is, one, we think we have a really good team, a team that's going to compete with those teams that you mentioned. And our hope is, again, from our pipeline, guys like Kyle Harrison, Marco Luciano, that those guys can come up. You look like at a team like the Astros and a lot of their star players that fans really have gotten to attach to and that have led to a lot of their success are homegrown guys. So, the hope is that you've got a solid base. You've got a couple of stars who can come up through your system, and then you surround them with the right type of player. So, again, we really like our lineup. We think we've got a lot of power. We think our defense has been upgraded. We've added depth to our rotation and our bullpen. The bullpen was a big issue for us last year, and adding Taylor Rogers and Luke Jackson is really going to help there. having Scott Alexander the whole season, as well as he pitched for us down the stretch, is going to be big. And so, some of these may be incremental improvements and not grabbing a lot of headlines. But again, we went 500 last year in a season where we thought a lot of stuff went wrong. We had a plus 19 run differential. So the indicators are there that if we clean up some of the issues that we had, we can be right back, in the playoff race, and that's what we're expecting.
And it feels like, and Farhan, I know we're running out of time, but it feels like to me like the next generation of this team has to be homegrown. Like, you didn't get Judge, you didn't get Correa, all these guys, Carlos Rodon, left town, Gosman, left town, all these guys. So you mentioned Kyle Harrison, Marco Luciano. I want to hear the name Casey Schmidt, Vaughn Brown, maybe. Are there others we're forgetting? And is that truly in your macro grease board plan of how the Giants get to the World Series? Is it going to be the homegrown talent, and how long do we have to wait?
Yeah, I think some of those guys we could see this year. I mean, we're going to see a handful of those guys in Major League Camp. I know we haven't put our list out yet, but a few of those guys are going to be there. It's sort of a sign of the maturity of our system that I think from, in terms of our non-roster list, rather than having, a bunch of minor league free agents, we're going to have a lot of our own players coming in, and it'll be a great chance for us to see that. But, guys like Casey Schmidt and Vaughn Brown and Kyle Harrison, those guys are all going to be in AA and AAA to start the season. Luciano too, for that matter. So, once you hit AA to start a season, you have every chance to make it to the big leagues at some point. So I think we're going to start seeing some of those names as this season progresses, and that'll certainly be a source of excitement and ultimately, our hope and expectations that are helping us win games. And
the stated goal of this team is to win the NL West?
Absolutely. I mean, that's always got to be the goal coming in. And, I know there are times when 2021 feels like it was a decade ago, but it was only a year ago. Got a lot of the same players. We've got a lot of the same infrastructure, and we've added a lot of players too. So that's going to be our goal. And I think that's got to be your goal at the start of every season.
Farhan, you gave us 20 minutes of your time.
Thanks
on
so much,
Morning
Farhan.
Drive.
Yeah.
We know it's not always pleasant, but hey, man, we are sure to appreciate
We
you.
do.
And everybody's hoping. We all want wins.
We all want the same thing, no doubt.
No, I appreciate that. We all want the same things. Know the questions have been out there. And again, our hope is as we get rolling here, we're excited. We hope the fans get excited, and we're looking forward to a really exciting and successful season.
We'll look forward to our next conversation, Farhan. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Farhan Zaidi on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.